The House Oversight Committee will come to order. Madam Clerk, please take attendance.
Chair Johnson.
Here.
Representatives Outman.
Here.
Hoytinga.
Here.
Riley.
Here.
O'Malley.
Here.
Wozniak.
Here.
Brixey.
Here.
LeGrand. Young.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you do have a quorum.
Thank you. With that, Representative Outman moves to adopt the minutes from the August 17, 2021 committee meeting. Seeing no objection, the minutes are approved. All right, I want to thank everyone for being here this morning. We had the UIA Acting Director Olson before our committee once again. She was here previously back in March. Just to give a heads up, the Floor Leader's Office has instructed us to adjourn by 10:15. So when we get to our questions, I ask that you limit your editorializing or pontificating and just ask the question. If you're going beyond 20 seconds, I reserve the right to cut in and move to the next person. I want to start by just giving a brief timeline of what brought us to where we are today. So back in March of 2020, Governor Whitmer issued her first of many shutdown orders. This included even stopping lawn care workers from mowing grass. Now, obviously, this wholesale shutdown of the economy led to a massive spike in unemployment, one that we've never seen before, and that the agency was not able to handle that influx of claims. Most of our offices spent the entire summer of 2020 with the majority of your staff's time focused on helping constituents deal with unemployment issues. After the initial wave of unemployment was over and months to get caught up, there are still many issues. All those issues led to the the resignation of Director Steve Gray in November of 2020, and he left with an $85,000 hush fund payout on the way out. At that time, Acting Director Olson stepped in. In October of 2020, the Department of Labor began an audit of the unemployment agency, and on January 6th did an exit interview with the agency to inform them of the results. The audit was officially presented to the agency on February 10. On February 25, the Department of Labor sent a memo to all the states informing them of certain updated guidelines. In March of this year, Acting Director Olson appeared before our committee to discuss many of these issues. At that same time, we began hearing from many of our constituents who were receiving 1099s saying that they received unemployment benefits when in actuality they hadn't. Someone had committed identity theft in their name, and now they were owing tax dollars because of that. At the end of June, the agency sent letters to 700,000 Michiganders informing them that they potentially have to repay benefits that they were maybe not actually deserving of. This is what began the process of our committee commencing investigation into the agency. We reached out to the agency asking for communication with the federal government regarding what caused these 700,000 letters. They referred to us the February 25 memo. They never once told us about the audit that they failed on January 6th that specifically in Finding 7 called out these 4 qualifications for PUA that were not approved. It had nothing to do with the memo. It had everything to do with that audit. And yet the committee was misled. We were not informed about that. We only found out about that through a third source. Unemployment issues continue to be one of the biggest issues that our offices face. Prior to this hearing, I had multiple staff members from both Republican and Democrat offices. This is not a partisan issue. Staff members from both offices coming up to me, hoping that we can get results and some changes because they are incredibly frustrated by what's going on there. So that is what leads us to today. The Acting Director Olson is before us today. They have provided us with a presentation that we will email to the committee members. Because you've already been before our committee with a presentation, I think we'd like to just get straight to questions here because we are limited on time. So Acting Director Olson, are you there?
I am here.
All right, great. We're glad to have you. Let's just start with kind of a broad overview, and we'll kind of get more narrow as we move forward. Obviously, we'll talk about the monitoring report at some point. But just to start things off, former Director Steve Gray, he resigned amid a myriad of issues at the agency. Since you've taken over, what changes have you made to fix those, and what would you consider some of your accomplishments so far?
Well, I do have an opening statement that I would like to make because there have been a significant number of changes in the agency since the last time I was here. And I do have a presentation that explains the process that you want to discuss today. So I would like the opportunity to read my opening statement.
So we have the presentation. We'll share that with everyone. Just limit to your opening statement for this point, and then if the questions go towards your presentation, we can cross that bridge when we get there.
Point of order.
Just a second. Yes,
I
Representative?
mean, if this is an oversight hearing, we need to hear the actual testimony from the director. Please,
Right.
please allow us to hear the presentation. I mean, this is not an interrogation. We need to hear directly from the acting director the information that we have.
So the acting director, I said, can do their opening statement. They have provided a presentation. We have emailed that to all of you guys, or we're going to here shortly, if you haven't already received it. The director was already before our committee back in March. We had a presentation then. We have a number of issues. We have questions that we want to ask. That is our purpose of committee, not to just hear what the department wants to tell us, but to get answers that our constituents demand of us. That is the purpose of this. We are limited in our time. If I had 5 hours, I'd go ahead and do it, but we don't. So with that, Director, if you can go ahead and do your opening statement.
This is the fourth time I have appeared before legislative committees. UI and Leo legislative teams have participated in over 60 weekly and biweekly calls with lawmakers and their staff. We have also participated in more than 150 town halls and have issued a weekly newsletter providing updates on significant happenings in UI to your staff. We appreciate the increased work legislative staff have taken over the past 18 months as we have all worked through this increased activity. UI's dedicated staff continue to work long hours and mandated overtime to respond to claimant issues. While they are trained to work with angry and upset customers, I will not tolerate physical threats against my staff. When threats of violence are received, we immediately notify the appropriate police authorities for investigation and local prosecution. Regardless of how angry a claimant is, the threat of violence is never tolerated. UI staff work very hard to make sure that those who are entitled to unemployment benefits receive them. Since the pandemic, we have processed more than 5.3 million unemployment claims. That's 26 times the normal workload. Each week, we take more than 23,000 calls from claimants. Since April of this year, we have answered 2.4 million calls and have responded to 553,000 virtual chats. These state employees are professionals. Many have built a career at UI, and I'm proud of the work they do under extremely trying circumstances. Our 650 permanent employees, a number significantly cut under the previous administration, continues to do their best every day to get money out the door to claimants who need to pay bills, put food on the table, and support local businesses. The agency has had a tremendous impact on the state's economy. Since the beginning of the pandemic, UI has paid out over $38 billion to 2.4 million Michigan workers, over 99% of eligible claimants. Studies indicate for every dollar of unemployment benefits, it results in $2 of economic activity. That means the full impact of Michigan's programs over the past 17 months has totaled $76 billion into our local economies. That money paid for prescriptions, groceries, rent, mortgages, car repairs, and more. It helped to support local businesses, both large and small, neighborhood stores, restaurants, health providers, and others. Unemployment benefits have been a critical shot in the arm to Michigan's economy as we rebound from COVID. When the auto industry was affected by the computer chip shortage, UI provided temporary work search waivers for those who were laid off. Due to the prolonged nature of this chip shortage, employers needed additional flexibility that we were able to provide, and I want to thank Senator Horn for his assistance in this area. We have also implemented several disaster assistance unemployment programs based on severe weather incidences across the state. When I spoke to the committee in March, our agency since I've spoke to them, we have reopened our 12 local offices across the state. You can now schedule through our website any in-person, phone, or virtual appointment. This has increased our ability to work with claimants, and we can schedule over 5,500 face-to-face interactions per week. And since June, when we reopened our local offices, we have had more than 25,000 in-person appointments. Our staff answer over 5,000 phone appointments a week, and we've had 218,000 plus of those appointments since October of last year. We have completed 1,600 virtual appointments a week and have handled over 12,000 of those since July of this year. We are particularly excited about providing a closed caption option for our virtual appointments to serve claimants who are deaf and hard of hearing. Staff have participated in 212 face-to-face appointments since we launched that feature at the end of July. The closed captioning is very accurate, and we're optimistic that this will continue to grow in usage as more people learn about this option. Our Top of the Nation Workshare program continues to draw interest from the business community. Workshare provides businesses that are facing tough times and considering laying off workers an option to stay open and keep their workers employed. One company that has used Workshare is MAG Automotive of Sterling Heights, which retained its workforce while cutting costs to stay in business. Through Workshare, MAG saved on payroll and efficiently managed its future work. MAG Automotive said the Workshare approach provided assurance to its employees that the company would come out of uncertain times safe, unified, and prepared. We hope to continue to work with the legislature on ways to support Workshare so we can expand the program to keep businesses afloat and workers employed during the current pandemic and possible future economic downturns. Beginning on May 31st, UI re-implemented the work search requirement. Claimants receiving unemployment benefits are required to search for work and report at least one work search activity for each week they claim benefits. To continue to provide exceptional customer service, UI must make structural changes to technology systems and how it communicates to Michigan workers and businesses. 10 years ago, we implemented a new system that was light years ahead of the mainframe technology the agency had used for decades. Because of the speed at which technology changes, now is an appropriate time to review what next generation options are available to UI. We want to provide a better, more agile user experience for both our claimants and employer users. Until a new system is implemented, we need to continue using what is available to us. Installing a new system cannot be done overnight. And in the meantime, Fast Enterprises is providing a new upgrade to Midas. It will address a number of our current concerns with the system. Until a determination is made on a new system, we need to continue with our current system for our unique needs. As we announced this morning, we are partnering with DTMB to begin the process of determining what is available in the current marketplace. Any system chosen must be secure, robust, and at the same time user-friendly and intuitive for those applying for benefits and for employer use. The RFI is a way for us to find out which companies are out there and which can provide a secure, robust, user-friendly system. Next week, we will issue the RFI, which is the first step toward the process of evaluating operating systems. We have also launched several initiatives regarding the use of plain language in our communications to both the claimant, employer, and employer communities. Our goal is to make our letters and applications easier to understand in a clearer and more concise format, using plain language to provide important information more clearly. UIA is contracting with the Detroit-based nonprofit Sevilla to update the agency's public-facing user experience with the goal of making them easier to navigate and understand. Civilla's efforts with other state departments have increased usability by Michigan residents. This effort kicks off in October. Next, I want to address the issue that has been in the news lately. We made the right choice to resolve the issues regarding the federal pandemic unemployment assistance program. The U.S. Department of Labor required us to end allowing people to receive PUA for any of the 4 now ineligible reasons. They also required us to notify anyone who was denied PUA about the 3 new eligible reasons under which they could qualify for PUA. For those who chose only one of the 4 now ineligible reasons, no longer qualified for PUA, and needed to be given the opportunity to re-qualify by selecting one of DOL's 3 new reasons, if appropriate. For those who did not respond, they were sent waiver letters stating that they did not qualify for PUA under the 3 new reasons and did not have to repay any money they received from PUA because they selected one of the now 4 ineligible reasons. Here's the timeline on how we got to where we are today. In April of 20, the agency was notified by USDOL of a federal program to provide unemployment benefits to those who traditionally would not qualify. In July of 20, DOL greenlighted Michigan's application for the program, which included the 4 now ineligible reasons. During that intervening time, USDOL provided continuous updated eligibility guidance, including now requiring claimants to submit attachment to the workforce and wage income information, among many other changes. In October of 20, DOL performed a monitoring review of Michigan's PUA program. On January 6th, DOL staff provided their findings verbally to UI that Michigan's 4 additional criteria were now not allowed. On January 30th, UI eliminated the 4 ineligible criteria from the PUA application, meaning from that point on, no one who signed up for the program could choose one of the 4 ineligible criteria. On February 10th, UI received the written monitoring report from DOL, which repeated what was told to us verbally on January 6th. At that point, we had already removed the criteria from the application, and that we were also told we had to reevaluate those claims. On February 25th, we received official direction from DOL to add 3 new reasons developed by DOL to qualify for PUA. The UIPL required that anyone who previously was denied had to be offered the opportunity to re-qualify using one of the 3 new reasons. On March 16th, the 4 ineligible reasons were eliminated from claimant recertification pages. On May 5th, DOL provided guidance to the states to address how to process waivers for overpayment related to federal programs. Additionally, there is language in the Michigan Employment Security Act that can allow waivers for overpayment. Also, if claimants couldn't qualify for certification under the 3 new criteria, the agency is able to waive recoupment since it was not a claimant's fault that they did not qualify other than by using one of the now ineligible options. Waiving recoupment was the right thing to do. If additional information comes to light regarding someone who has received a waiver and it is determined that fraud occurred, we can rescind the waiver and demand restitution. Currently, we have provided waivers to 263,927 people. We are still processing additional waivers and hope to have those completed next week. At the same time we were standing up these federal programs, more than 50 significant policy updates needed to occur. including the CARES Act, the American Rescue Plan Act, and the American Recovery Act, to adjust programs that affect hundreds of thousands of Michiganders on the fly would have created significant problems for claimants. We had to prioritize those changes to be the least disruptive to the claimants. Congress determined these programs would end by September 6th, and states, including Michigan, have complied with that timeline. We have provided claimants with information regarding free state resources that are available, such as mytalent.org, accessing Michigan Works, and Leo's Return to Work Playbook to aid with job searches, resume writing, interview tips, and even changing careers. We also have worked with employers to help match them with job candidates so they can fill openings that are critical to running a successful business.
Can you please wrap up your opening remarks so we can get to questions?
I am. In closing, I and UI leadership recognize that we have more work to do. We continue processing work items in our tremendous caseload, and we look to the legislature for support in allocating the requested FTE count to help us complete this work. For those calling for my removal, this is not an easy job. If it were, the previous administration had 8 years and 7 UI directors who could have made changes a long time ago. Michigan is not alone in struggling to meet the demands for unemployment benefits. UI systems are unique, complicated, and no off-the-shelf technology that you can install in one day and have working seamlessly the next exists. While we are close to paying every single eligible claimant for benefits they qualify for, we are not at 100%. But we are committed to making sure they receive every dollar they are entitled to. We're using every tool and resource we can and are continuously making improvements to better serve Michigan's jobless workers. With that, I'm ready to take your questions.
All right, thank you for that. So unfortunately, some of your comments are in direct contradiction to what the federal audit says. You say the now ineligible for qualifications. You kept saying the now ineligible, the now ineligible. When I read the audit under finding 7, the very first sentence, the reviewers, those conducting the audit, identify that the state's initial and continued PUA applications list 4 additional reasons not supported under the CARES Act. That the state's initial application. So it wasn't the now ineligible. This has been ineligible since day 1. I think that's an important clarification. Would you like to comment on that?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear a question.
Okay, well, if you don't want to comment on that, you are in contradiction to what the report says. Furthermore, in your opinion, I mean, I'm hearing a lot of talk about how great you guys have done, all the work you're doing. I'm going to tell you, my constituents have a very different viewpoint here, but we'll let you think differently. You have to admit there's been some failures in the agency. In your opinion, what are those failures and what steps are you taking to fix those?
We have had 3 new programs in the last 18 months, that 3 acts of Congress that we have been provided guidance on to implement to help people through this pandemic.
I'm not asking for excuses. I'm asking for what you believe you've done wrong and ways to fix them. I think that's what is problematic here, is when I look for a leader, the leader takes responsibility. They don't just blame other people. And that's what I keep hearing, is just blaming other people.
I'm sorry, who am I blaming?
You're blaming Congress. You're blaming the previous administration. You're blaming lack of funding. You're blaming all kinds of things. What you're not doing is you're not taking responsibility.
I'm sorry, I absolutely take responsibility for what I have done since I entered this agency. We have had to make decisions on what are the priorities to get money out the door. We have done that to the best of our ability with the tools that we have. If we have not done it as fast and as efficiently as you believe we needed to, then we need to work toward making the programs more efficient. However, we have paid 99% of the people who applied and were eligible. We always have those who are outliers, and we continue to work to try to pay them if they are eligible. The sheer volume that we have had to deal with requires us to make sure that we are not paying fraudulent people and that we have all the identity theft that we're trying to deal with that. So, sheer volume in a system that was not designed to handle 2.4 million people in 1 year. We are moving as quickly as we can. If is the failure that we couldn't move faster, okay, then, we will work on trying to move faster. But we have done yeoman's work to get this programs up and running and working and paying folks.
Okay, so let's touch on, you talked about identity theft claims. Let's touch on that. This committee twice now has had a resident of Michigan, her name is Ilona Belor, talked about how people were claiming benefits in her name, and she immediately tried to contact the agency saying, hey, this isn't me. Someone is trying to commit identity theft. Stop paying them. Never could get through to you guys. Now she has a tax bill saying she owes tax dollars on money she never received. She tried to do all the right things, and she still, to this day, has not heard back from the agency about have they stopped paying this person? Are they still paying? Is she going to have a tax bill for next year too? What do you say to someone like Ilona Belor, who's been before our committee twice? I know you guys watched the committee, and yet it seems like nothing's happening. The thing continues to go on. And this isn't just one person. We have all kinds of people, but her situation really stands out here.
Correct. But if we're going to legally tell somebody that they have committed fraud, we have a higher bar than just saying, we've made a determination about something. So therefore, it takes more work. We have sent out many 1099-Gs that have updated, and we have a significant group of those that are going to be occurring in the next few weeks, that folks will be notified that they are getting a new 1099 that they can share with the IRS. The IRS is well aware of the situation that is occurring in all 50 states with regards to identity theft. So, and if it was a claimant, we would not be able to tell your constituent any information about that claimant. We can only discuss with her claim. And if she did not have a claim, then we would need to make sure that she is taken care of. And if she reported it, even if she did not hear back from us, the claim was flagged immediately for suspicion of fraud and payment was stopped.
Maybe it was flagged, maybe it wasn't. We don't know. What we do know is she got a tax bill at the end of the year, so clearly something didn't work out correctly. With that, I will move on to Representative Outman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Olson, I'd like to continue the conversation of fraud. I believe a Deloitte report estimates the amount of fraud to potentially be $1.5 billion. The committee asked you for an estimate of fraud. I believe it was back in March, and you didn't know then. Does the agency have an idea of that number now? And if that Deloitte report was indeed accurate?
The Deloitte report indicated that they believe that that's how much, that is an estimate. And we are continuing to work through those fraud cases. As you know, we have found, working with our federal partners, 39 people who have been indicted for fraudulent activity for UI. And there are many more in the pipeline that are going through that process right now. So we do not have a stronger number because it's just a timely process when we're prosecuting them. But, we have stopped payment on over 500,000 claims that were of fraudulent identity. No money went out the door for any of those claims. So we continue to have, before September 4th, we continue to have a significant amount of fraudulent applications coming in. And I would like to have the clerk unmute Todd Cook so he can respond as well.
I'm sorry, what I think you can answer his question here. The question is, as far as the amount of fraud, I mean, we have you. I know Todd Cook is the legislative liaison. We work with him, but we have the director. We want to talk to the director. The Deloitte report estimated $1.5 billion. We're just asking, is that a close estimate in your opinion, or do you guys have other numbers that it would actually be different?
We do not have another number that would be different.
Okay. Do you have a number as to the fraud that is incurred so far that you're aware of?
Yes, that we know that we have stopped at least 500,000 fraudulent attempts of people trying to receive through identity theft payment through our UI system. And we have been able to stop that. And we have several 100,000 other claims that we are looking at for attempted or potential fraudulent behavior.
Yeah, Director, do you have a dollar amount you could put to that, though? I understand 500,000 claimants that have filed fraudulently, but is there any sort of dollar amount you could put to that as well?
I do not.
Okay. Would the director of your fraud division have that number potentially?
Well, that's not kind of how we work it. We work it by cases. And so we try to do the biggest ones first, the ones that the federal law partners want us to work with, the OIG. And so we're doing those in the order that they're asking us, and we have access to the information.
Okay. Any chance that you could keep us updated with some sort of monthly report or bi-monthly report that would detail the amount of fraud that you guys are uncovering? This would be something that would be really relevant to our work within the House Oversight Committee.
We can work toward providing you something. We don't have a report put together like that
Okay. Is that
currently.
okay? Well, is that something that you guys could provide us in the future?
Yeah, we can try to put something together. Yes.
Okay.
Um,
Very good. Well, that's all for now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, Representative O'Malley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Director Olson. I guess I want to ask.
Excuse me, could you hold on a quick second? My battery's dying on my laptop.
We'll let you plug it in if you need to real quick.
Or just for, you might have to.
Technology's a bugger.
Okay. All right, I'm ready. Sorry.
Not a problem. Question I have is, and probably a couple of follow-ups is, where's the UIA trust fund these days? Last I'd seen it was dropping like a rock.
I'm sorry. All I'm hearing is a clicking noise.
All right, I'll try again. How's that? Can you hear me? I don't believe she can hear me, Mr. Chair. And I had a brilliant question.
Can you hear this mic at all, or are you able to hear the committee?
I'm sorry. I can't hear what you're saying. All I'm hearing is a clicking.
It's either the Russians or the Chinese, I know it.
It said low battery, and now all I'm hearing is a clicking. Okay,
Are you able to hear us at all?
okay. Try again.
All right,
Try
go
again.
ahead. Go ahead, Rep. O'Malley.
Are we here? Can you hear me, ma'am?
I think I can.
All
Yeah.
right, we'll give it a shot. My question was, the UIA trust fund, where's it at? Last I saw, it was dropping like a rock. How much money's in it, and where are we at?
We are at, currently we're at slightly under $1 billion in the trust fund. So I think the last week when I looked at the number, we were at about 958 million. So we're slightly under $1 billion in the trust fund.
So if you could help me here for small business, because I know when it drops to a certain point, please educate me. Our businesses have to they get taxed higher on that. And has that been triggered? Are they paying more now because of that, or is that being able to be delayed or stopped in any way, shape, or form?
That has not been triggered at this point. And because the unemployment benefits for the last 18 months under the federal programs were paid for by the federal government, and businesses it was hit in the non-charging account. Businesses should not see any increase in their taxable rate for the next 2 years.
All right. Hopefully we can stall it and they don't have to. I get the other thought I have is I don't like to think ill of anybody, but in this very room about a year ago, I asked Director Gray some questions, and he said to me that he was unaware at the time of calls being dropped, that people would get onto the internet, to the website, and they'd be locked out. He was unaware of that. And then he told me that by, I forget the date, was like within a week, everybody would be paid that was delayed. And I said, well, some people at the time were with 8 weeks without payment. We'll have everybody done in a week. And it didn't happen. So now I move forward. I'm a trusting guy. I move forward, and I see where it appears that you guys got notification in January. You didn't alert people to what was going on. You didn't alert the legislature to what was going on. So I guess I don't like to be this way, but how can I trust? How can I be comfortable in the fact that UIA knows what they're doing and is going to inform people as to what's going on? Because a year ago, the director was obviously unaware. Now, I know that things have changed a little bit, but here I see in January, February, there's real possibility that we weren't informed. People weren't informed. Why should we trust?
Well, I mean, in January with the monitoring review, we were notified of changes and every state got a monitoring review. And a monitoring review is not an audit. You cannot fail a monitoring review. It is an opportunity for DOL to come in and look at your program and say, these are changes that you need to make, and there is no negative consequence to you because you're in the process of making those changes, which we have completed most of them. I think we have one additional outstanding item that we have to complete for that monitoring review. We made the changes that were necessary so that people who were moving or coming into the system no longer could make make the mistake of picking one of the 4 that was now ineligible. For those who had selected one of the ineligible, they had to stop being paid. But at that point, we did not have the 3 new reasons that came a few weeks later. So we've had 50 UIPLs, executive orders, and change notices and these are for major policy changes to these programs, and 3 programs that we have had to set up all of these activities: PUA, PEUC, FPUC, MEUC, extended benefits, all of these programs all at the same time. So I guess I'm unclear on.
So I guess let me clarify what I mean is we need to know, you guys, if you don't know, and I believe you do, so I don't mean to, you're in the hot seat here. Your department, previous administration running it, whatever, has been, you've done some good things, but you've been, to public image, everything, you've failed. Director Gray, we aren't hanging up. We aren't, our computer system's not shutting people down. And it was by the tens of thousands, and he didn't know. And now here in January, I'm trying to say, hey, buck up, let's go. And in January, you found out that you were going to have to send letters out to people. Why don't you just tell us? Why don't you come to the chair or whoever and say, hey, guess what? We're going to have to send out these letters, and people are going to be scared to death. Why? Why not? Why can't we work together here? Why don't you tell us this? The image of your department right now is not very good, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You know, we make decisions every day. We send out mail every day. We send out letters every day to claimants. We have made changes to all of these programs. Everybody in the system has received multiple letters from us when there is a change that has occurred. I have not come before the legislature every time we have needed to do one of these. We were told, and we did reevaluate those who were no longer eligible for PUA. And then when we found out there were 3 new reasons, we determined, so the vast majority of those people had stopped receiving PUA. We determined that we needed to let them know that there were 3 new options. They had the opportunity to contact us and tell us if they were eligible for one of those 3 new options. Once we did not hear from them, they received the letter indicating to them that we were going to waive that payment because of the problem.
Ma'am, I'm not
Now,
talking about, I'm talking
could we have
about
been more
us,
succinct
the
and clear about it?
legislature. I'm talking about the legislature. We've come to you. We've had committees before your organization, your department, not just you, and we've asked these questions. But yet, then we have to find out through a third party this has happened? That's my question, and I guess my comment here. Sometimes we all have to stop thinking like politicians and bureaucrats and think like we got to talk to the people here. And you sent out a zillion letters saying you're going to have to pay back, whatever the issue was. Nobody knew they were coming until they landed, and these people are already unsure and untrusting. So maybe we can't go back and put the genie back in the bottle, but maybe moving forward here, you talk to us. I guess that's my point. And I know I get the fact that the federal government threw you some curveballs. I get that. And I get that the canoe was taking on water through all of this. I get that. It was happening to all of us. But sometimes it's a good idea just to reach out and say, hey, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Majority Leader, Mr. Chair, here's what's going on. So if that doesn't make sense, then, I guess it doesn't make sense. But that's where I'm at. We need to know. And our constituents are screwed. They're scared. They're calling us saying, what the heck's this? We need more conversation. I don't doubt that you are working on some things. But when it comes to customer service and customer communication, I would say that your department historically in the last year and a half has failed in many ways.
All right, and I share those sentiments. I mean, when you're talking about 700,000 letters going out, you knew that in January, just tell us. Like, I think everyone on this committee, we're not expecting perfection from the executive branch. Like, we understand we are flawed human beings. There's not going to be a perfect agency. But if you could just be upfront and say, hey, we were identified at this problem. We're working to fix it. This is what it's going to look like. In fact, partner with us and say, there's going to be a lot of people send a letter saying that they owe $20,000 back, and they're going to be panicked. Maybe we should work together ahead of time and so we can tell them, hey, we screwed up. You don't owe the money. We're going to find another way to pay for that. But that didn't happen. There was no communication. You were before our committee in March. You never brought that up. No, we never asked the question because we didn't know or think to ask that type of question. And then when we asked you guys for the communication between the agency and the federal government that prompted this, you referred to some February 25 memo that went to all the states and conveniently left out this monitoring report. I think that's where so many of us are frustrated, is there's zero transparency, there's zero willingness from the agency to be open with the legislature and how ways that we can work with you to help our constituents. We hear from our constituents on this issue daily, but we're not even in a position to help them, it feels like. But with that, I will pass it off to Rep. Brixey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to speak on this important topic that has impacted so many people, millions of people, 2.5 million people. It seems to me that there's 39 million very good, excellent things that the unemployment agency has done during this whole time period, because that's how much money has been delivered to Michigan residents. Now, my question is really, I think Mr. Cook could answer my question best, Mr. Chair. And so, you know, I have been frustrated because it seems that we're asking what can be done, and yet we haven't provided the 500 additional employees that have been requested for the unemployment. And so my question for Mr. Cook is, what can the legislature do to help the UIA improve customer service for the residents of Michigan? I know that you've been,
I'm gonna let you finish. I want to make sure, because we have the special opportunity with the director.
Yeah,
we
I'm
can talk to
asking
Todd
the
and
question.
At other points in time, we can talk to a legislative liaison. This morning, we have limited time. We have a special opportunity to have the director. Any question you have, we ask that you direct it to the director. Thank you.
This is oversight of the department. Okay, this is oversight committee. It's not oversight with just the director. There are multiple people involved. Now, my office has been participating in weekly legislative calls with the UIA. So your assertion that they haven't communicated with us is patently false.
Well, they didn't tell us about the 700,000 letters going out. We found out about that from our constituents. They failed to inform us that they failed well, they didn't fail. You can't fail a monitoring report, but they had a problem there. They never told us about that. The fact that they do a weekly call and say, hey, everything's going well, look at all the cases we're doing, look at all the money that we're sending out, that is not actual working with the legislature. So, no. It doesn't sound like you have a question. It sounds like you're filibustering here. Do you have a question for the director?
My question is, what can the legislature do to help the UIA improve customer service experience for the residents of Michigan? And I have 2 follow-up questions on software.
What we do need is the authorization to continue using the limited term staff that we have brought on to help with the claims load into the next fiscal year.
Wait, so you're telling me that the legislature has not authorized the additional employees that have been requested, and yet we're complaining about the amount of customer service, but we aren't giving you the people that you need to get the job done correctly? Is that what you're saying?
It has not been authorized, correct, since March.
Well, that's terrible. I have another question about, you know, it seems to me that my office participated in all these weekly calls, and like many other, we have been desperately trying to help people who need assistance. You know, the challenge that we're facing is that the unemployment agency had this incredible, unprecedented amount of claims. Remind me what the claim number was again. I forgot what the total.
We had 5.3 million claims and we paid 2.4 million.
Okay, so we had almost 5.5 million claims. We've got 10 million people in the state. I know other states are dealing with this as well, but the software delivery, we don't have a system that is developed for having that amount of people or volume. Can you walk me through the contractual relationship with FAST and Midas, and can you talk about like how that contract started and who owns the contract?
FAST is the company that built the Midas system. Midas is just the name that they came up with for the system. And so we have a contractual relationship with FAST Enterprises. That began in 2009. The system originally went live on the tax side in 2012 and on the benefit side in 2013. with this unprecedented demand, we have gone to DTMB. They have expanded our server capacity. They have expanded our phone capacity. We have been working with all of the vendors we currently use to be able to add additional capacity that we have needed over the past 18 months. None of it happens immediately, Lo, because you can't afford to shut down what you have if something goes wrong with increasing the volume that you're trying to get to. So we have a relationship with FAST. We would have moved forward with potentially going out for an RFP, because as I said, you know, technology changes so quickly, but in our system, it's a very costly system. So you have to have the money for that to make any changes. So my understanding is the agency was looking to potentially go out and look for what was in the marketplace just prior to when the pandemic happened. We were not making any kind of a change in the middle of all of this. Now that we are coming out on the other side of it, it is the opportunity for us to go out and do what we had planned on doing more than a year ago, before the pandemic started. So this isn't something new. This was something that we had planned on doing, but you can't get rid of FAST. I can't go back to tapping out an adjudication form on a rock like we're in the Flintstones. We have to use what we have available to us, and the additional dollars that went on the state ad board that was on the agenda. My understanding is there are legislators who serve on the ad board. And so this cloak of darkness and, you know, that kind of stuff, we followed the proper procedure, and we had to add to that contract in order to continue using them while we are looking for potential new options.
Have you been frustrated to have to deal with this software system that the Snyder administration implemented and caused all of the unnecessary and incorrect fraud claims, way back, 4 or 5 years ago? I can imagine you must be frustrated by having to work with this antiquated system.
Well, like I said, when we started with it, it was light years ahead, but it has become antiquated. There are lots of new potential options out there. Although in the UI world, if there was a perfect system, all 50 states would have already chosen it.
Right.
And all 50 states are using various different kinds of programs.
Right.
So, we are ready to look at what is now going to be available to us.
It seems like, one of the other problems that we have is that, and I think we see this through our government agencies, where one system doesn't talk to another system. So, the struggles that we're having at this oversight committee are a result of federal changes in criteria. And so we're the state and we deliver the services, but we receive the money from the federal government, and we have to comply with their regulations. So, the Congress and USDOL, they all make these changes that are confusing to our constituents and confusing to offices trying to assist them. How many changes have you had to implement throughout this process?
There have been literally hundreds of coding changes that have had to occur in our system. And for anybody who works in IT or understands IT, if you make one change in the system and you do not test it thoroughly,
Right.
it can cause a problem someplace else in the system, which slows down making changes. And so sometimes we're not as nimble as we would like to
Right.
be, but with the system that we currently have, that's what we have to do. Because like I said, we're not going to make a change that causes more problems for the claimant down the road. We're already making an incredible number of changes that are affecting them just by the changes in all of the guidance. But we had to make hundreds and hundreds of changes in our system to account.
So now you've asked your couple follow-ups, but we do have an agreement that the software is broken. And yet, a couple weeks ago, the state admin board, which is the legislature is not part of this, purely the executive branch, Governor Whitmer sits on, they approved an extension, extending this software that everyone agrees has failed, and yet they've extended it for yet another year. Now we're told they're going for an RFP this week. Why could they have not done that sooner? I don't know. I don't have a good answer on that one. If you're going to continue to blame software, then you should be in contact with your boss, the governor, and say, hey, we have an issue here. We need to fix this. I don't know, early in March, it seemed like there wasn't a lot of communication going on between the agency and the governor's office. I don't know if that's still the case or not. Representative Riley.
Thank you. Director Olson, you mentioned in your opening statement about the town halls, 150 town halls. Could you just talk a little bit about those? Were these, where were these held? How do you determine where you were going to have them? Some of the issues that came up.
If legislative staff or legislators contacted us and asked us to participate in a town hall in their district, if we absolutely could, we accommodated coming and being able to answer questions for their constituents. And we did that more than 150 times.
And what kind of feedback did you get?
Well, I mean, you get the positive and the negative. You get the people who come and tell you what their issues are. And then you periodically get somebody who says, I had a good experience with the agency. And I got paid and, there were no problems with it. However, as we all know, town halls are where people come because they have an outstanding issue. And we're okay with that because people do have outstanding issues with us. We still have 20,000 people. It's not the same 20,000 people. It's a rotating group of 20,000 that have come in and out of the system that have not been paid. But we still have those people. And, everybody in this world wants everything instantaneously. And our system is not set up for instantaneous.
Out of that, do you have an average of how many people attended those town halls?
I have no idea. You'd have to ask Todd Cook, and he's not being allowed to speak today.
And did you disseminate the information that you received from those town halls? Was it accumulated, the data, and then given to the people in your agency so they could review that?
If somebody came forward and we were able to take their information, that information was shared with the CRT staff that does the legislative work, and it was put into the Curtis system.
But an accumulative of all the comments that came up, this wasn't put into some kind of report that was given to your agency, so you would kind of know what the people out in the field are saying?
We were asked to be a participant at a town hall where other issues might have been raised. Staff came back with what they needed to for constituent services and put those into that system, but we did not spend any time trying to put a report together. No.
Okay, well, thank you for your service. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So on that January 6th meeting where they discussed the monitoring report, you had 30 days to reply to the federal government. It took a third source for us to get a copy of the report. Are you guys willing to share your response that you sent to the federal government?
We are always willing to share. And I would remind the chair that Todd Cook did talk to you about the monitoring review report and the situation that occurred. If you would unmic him, he would be happy to give you and the rest of the committee the explanation of what happened.
Yeah, he told me about it after we were already made aware and it got in the public press. So we look at that audit or monitoring report, that's the word you want to use. In it, it has a list of the people in your agency that were there. You were not in attendance in the exit interview. To me,
No,
you're the leader of the agency. The federal government's doing a review of how well you're doing, and they come in to tell you the report. Why, as the head of the agency, why were you not at that meeting?
I have professional staff that do this for a living for the agency. We accept monitoring reviews, we go through audits, we do all of that. I do not need to be at those. They are more than capable of informing me after the meeting of what occurred, and that did happen. I did know what happened at that meeting. But 15 people don't need to be in the same meeting to hear those words and knowing that we were going to get an official written report. And we did move forward on making changes from that January 6th meeting, which is why the application was changed by January 30th.
I think we have a different viewpoint of what leadership looks like, because I think the leader of an agency should be there when you have something that's this significant. But we'll move on. As far as, we got a lot of constituents right now that they are trying to figure out what is going on. Do they have to pay? Do they not have to pay? They go on their, I don't know, there's a YWAM or something account, and it says they owe $20,000, but then they're hearing in the news, the governor says they don't have to pay it. No one has, I got CPAs calling us saying, what did my client have to do? Do they have to pay it? Do they not have to pay it? Explain for us the process here for the 700,000 people. What is going on? Do they have to pay? What certainty do they have knowing that they don't have to pay?
The 690,000 people who were given the opportunity to requalify for PUA and did not successfully do that were sent a letter indicating that any outstanding recoupment or restitution was waived. Once it says it's waived, unless, as we continue working through our caseload, we find out that a person who received a waiver was committing fraud. We then have the opportunity to go back and rescind the waiver and demand restitution. However, that would be a process, and very few people are probably going to be affected by that. So if somebody has received their waiver letter, that waiver letter stands. It says you do not have to repay this, but we by law have to tell them how much their restitution was and that we are waiving that amount of restitution. And we have to say it by the week that they would have received that payment.
How many waivers?
So it is a complicated system, but we have to and are required to provide that information so that if somebody does not agree, that they are able to protest or appeal to the agency and then to the other entities who do protests and appeals.
How many waivers have been denied at this point?
We have not denied any waivers from the requalification process because we are the one providing those waivers. Those people did not have to come forward and request a waiver. We gave it to them because it was through no fault of their own that they selected one of the 4 ineligible reasons. There are, however, people who may have been notified of restitution that is required to be repaid that are not part of the requalification process, and they can submit for a hardship waiver, and those will be considered. I do not have a number on how many of those have been submitted. I would have to get that and send it to you.
Okay, we've heard
But
from quite a few
for the
people that have been denied.
requalification people, there are the 263,000 that have received waivers. They did not have to request those waivers. We sent them those waivers because it was not their fault that they were given the opportunity to select a now ineligible option.
We've heard in our office a number of people who have had their waivers denied. We'll have to look in and see exactly what happened there. We've also had people contact us who they applied for unemployment. I don't think they're bad actors. I don't think they're trying to scam the system. They received it, seemed like everything was good. Now they're told, nope, you weren't supposed to get it. We want it back. And not only does the state want the money back, but they want it back with interest. Can you explain how you guys determine that?
Those would be people who are not part of this requalification process. Those are people who applied and provided us with information. And then because of self-attestation at the beginning, may have qualified. But once they were required to show attachment to the workforce or attachment or income, they may no longer have been eligible, and those folks would have to pay restitution. And the restitution, it's 1%, and you don't have to pay that until after the first year, I believe. So you have at least a year with no interest before you have to pay that before you have to start paying interest.
As far as when people go online and they view their account, most of them are saying they still owe the $20,000. When will that be updated?
If the requal people, they should not have anything in their account that says that. So if somebody has something in their account that says they have to repay $20,000, that would not be the requal people. That would be the people who, for some reason, received benefits and now we have determined are ineligible for those benefits. They can, however, request a waiver. And their My WAM account explains to them how to do that.
Representative LeGrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to ask one brief question on what we're on right now, but then I had another question.
Keep it brief.
Yeah. So the brief question on this is, can you please tell us or assure us, and this is to follow up on the chair's question, if we have these people out there who have gotten these waivers, which you initiated, you're allowing for the possibility that you may later determine that they committed fraud and essentially revoke your waiver. Can you assure us that that the computer system, MIDAS, is not going to spit out notifications of fraud without a human being actually reviewing that determination?
Correct. That's what happens if you are being considered as having possible fraud on your account. Those are done by an individual.
Okay, thank you. No,
Can I touch base on that one really
Absolutely.
quickly? As far as what is the timeline? I mean, can people say, hey, it's been 3 months, I haven't heard back, I don't have to pay this back? I mean, how long can you go before you say, actually, you know what, we do need this money back?
We have 3 years to find fraud on a case.
yeah. Boy, that's a lot of time. I would think we might want to have a shorter statute of limitation on that determination. So the broader question that I think, and there's been a lot of great points made, I think, and a lot of questions about, you know, how do we deal with current frustration, public relations, optics, interactions with the public. What I'm concerned about, and I'd like you to think about and tell me, if you are not the person planning this, who is, and if no one's planning this, then I think we need to know two things. One is, we said, emerge from unprecedented times. Now, unless the Russian labor market improves markedly and they all lose their computers, I expect that we're going to continue to have a lot of Russian hacking in the future. Now, we can say that we didn't have Russian hacking in 2010, but it seems to be here to stay. So my first question is, how are we going about building a permanent and more robust way of screening for identity theft, and what would the requirements be for a more robust system? Because you seem to have indicated that this happens, that you're not essentially involved in prosecution very aggressively or identification. You said, well, this is a case-by-case thing, and there's no fraud wing of the UIA, for example. And if this is a new problem, I'd like to know what your vision is for dealing with the, as far as I can see, sustainable into the future problem of systemic fraudulent claims. And, you know, to say Russian hackers is to put it sloppily, but it could be Ugandan hackers next year. The internet's not going away, fraud's not going away, it seems to me. So to say that's unprecedented, it may be unprecedented, but there's no reason to think it won't continue. Similarly, yeah, we just had an unprecedented epidemic. That isn't to say that we're not potentially going to have more epidemics in the future. So if you have a 100-year flood, you can say, gee, our dams weren't high enough, who could have predicted it? But if you have a 100-year flood the next year, eventually you start calling it rain. So I would like to know what your thinking is and what your agency's thinking is, and if you're not planning for this, who is on capacity building for future shocks to the system of this magnitude from pandemics, and future shocks to the system from systematic fraud, because I have no reason to think that either of those problems are going to vanish from the earth after we deal with the immediacy of these problems.
I would concur with you on the fraud component of it, because we spend a great deal of time working with our federal partners, and obviously we brought in Deloitte to help us look at our fraud. So we have continued to build a very robust fraud manager system. We continue to add options to that system as we find the new ways that the identity theft people are trying to get into the system. A lot of it just has to do with, you know, where do you place I can't get into a lot of detail. A lot of it just has to do with how they try to cheat the system. We work with DTMB on a regular, and when I say regular, I mean almost daily basis, to maintain the security of our system. And our fraud manager program looks at, and we have been able to detect 99% of the fraud coming in. We have a fraud division. We have staffed it up with contract workers and some additional limited term staff. We want to add more over on that side because of the amount of work they have to do, but we are keeping out the vast majority of fraud. And we also are doing analytics behind the scene on how to evaluate fraud. I just can't get into a lot of details because I'm unwilling to help anybody who's trying to commit fraud against the agency. But we absolutely understand what you're talking about, and it is a huge and top priority for us. In terms of capacity building, as we look for a new system, that will be one of the things that obviously we would be looking to be able to expand up and down. It costs a lot of money to just hold on to capacity you're not using. So we would want a system that is scalable, that would allow us for current work and then be able to scale up more quickly if a significant amount of additional work comes into the system. So we agree with you on both, that we need to work on scalability, but it needs to be scalable, because to continue to pay for space that you're not using at the current time is not a good use of resources. And when, there's economic tough times, that's, really not a good use of resources. So it would need to be a scalable capacity building system.
We just got a couple minutes left, so I want to get to Rep. Young for one last question here.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. You guys have touched on a number of my questions, so I won't repeat them. But one of the things I want to be clear about, that there is an ask on the table for the legislature, and that is authorization for additional workers. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we got that straight. And then I still want to go back to real quickly as it relates to the waivers. When we had testimony the last time, we had those young people from the university. Even my son was one of those. And he's my own test in my house on how things are working. So he recertified, he still did all of those things. He has not gotten any type of waiver letter. And I know that he's done everything right because I just happen to be his mom. And so we're trying to understand, when should everyone have received these letters? That's what I'm not clear about. And then, because we're out of time, I did want to also add that I've been working on some legislation that will hopefully resolve some of this, legislation that will ensure that people who have done the right thing, who have not tried to cheat the system, will not be forced to repay any money. And so we can talk about that later, but I do want you to know that we're working on legislation like that right now.
Okay. As I indicated, we have done 263,000 waivers. We still have, I'm going to say, a little over 100,000 more. We did, and this is how complex it is. There's two sets. There's people who were denied on a claim, and then there's people who were denied specific certification weeks. So we have completed the waivers for those who were denied a PUA claim because of one of the 4 ineligible reasons. We are now working on the folks who are being denied based on the certification week that they used one of the 4 ineligible reasons for that specific certification week. And so those are the ones we are working on now. We're working on them this week. We hope to have those done next week. And so we will be moving those out. And we do them in batches so we don't overwhelm our system. So it's going to take us until probably next week to finish those. So that's another more than 100,000 additional waivers that will be going out to people.
All right, we are at the end of our committee. Thank you for being here before us, Director Olson. I just want to touch on a couple quick things here. The Auditor General is here. They are currently conducting several different audits of the UIA. I think we're going to try to email everyone in the committee kind of a list of what those are and a time frame, and hopefully we can receive those. I think we got some good information here today, but I'm still disappointed. I don't think there's been a lot of responsibility taken. It seems like there's a lot of blame being placed, whether it's blaming the federal government, blaming the legislature, blaming funding. I'm not seeing a leader take responsibility. That's just my initial reaction, but we will continue to delve into this issue as we move forward. With that, the Oversight Committee is adjourned.